Did you know that something as simple as storing food in the wrong place can, over time, transform into a silent threat to your health? Many people do this every day, without imagining they're allowing something dangerous to grow right inside their refrigerator. It may seem like an exaggeration, but studies show that more than half of households still make serious mistakes in food storage, believing that the refrigerator is always the safest place. And if you're over 60 years old, you need even more care, because your body no longer reacts the same way to certain substances as before. Pay attention to this story. Mrs. Ruth, 74 years old, woke up very early every day to organize her kitchen. Always very careful, she cleaned the refrigerator, put vegetables in small bags, stored seasonings with great care. For years, she did this with the best of intentions. She stored potatoes, garlic, and even olive oil in the coldest part of the refrigerator, believing this would better preserve the food. She learned this from her mother and continued doing it throughout her life, until she began to feel different. Small pains in her joints, unusual fatigue, a constant indisposition, with no clear explanation. The tests didn't show anything serious, but the discomfort was real. It was only after a conversation with the nutritionist at the health center that she discovered something that completely changed her way of caring for her diet. Before continuing, I want to ask you to comment where you're from and subscribe to the channel. The professional explained that some foods, when stored in the refrigerator, can undergo changes in their natural structure. It's as if excessive cold causes a reaction that makes them less healthy. In the case of potatoes, for example, the starch turns into sugar, and when heated again, this sugar can form substances called acrylamides. These substances, according to World Health Organization studies, have carcinogenic potential. In other words, what seemed like a simple boiled potato at lunch could, over time, become something harmful. And nobody talks about this clearly. Onion is another example. When placed in the refrigerator, it begins to lose its natural properties, becoming moist inside, creating a favorable environment for fungi and bacteria. These microorganisms are not always visible to the naked eye, but they can cause silent inflammation in the body. Garlic, when cut and stored for a long time under refrigeration, also runs the risk of generating harmful toxins. And olive oil, when exposed to very low temperatures, undergoes changes in its composition, losing nutrients and potentially forming crystals that indicate oxidation. All of this may seem minor, but over the course of days, weeks, and years, the accumulation of these errors can indeed significantly affect your health. It's understandable. Most people grew up believing that refrigeration is synonymous with preservation. Technology came to make things easier, but we don't always use it correctly. Our parents stored everything in the refrigerator to avoid waste. We learned to do the same. And even today we hear people saying that everything lasts longer when it's cold. But what few people explain is that an older person's body reacts differently to these small changes in food. With aging, the immune system begins to function more slowly. This means it takes longer to identify and combat substances that would previously have been eliminated easily. Therefore, what might be just a slight discomfort for a young person can turn into a more serious reaction for an elderly person. Food poisoning, intestinal inflammation, increased stomach acidity, joint pain, and even more complex symptoms such as mental confusion and loss of appetite may be linked to these small toxins that accumulate in daily life. It's as if the body is gradually warning that something isn't going well. There is yet another factor that is rarely discussed. Intestinal sensitivity changes with age. The intestinal flora, those good bacteria that help with digestion and protection of the organism, can easily become unbalanced. When we ingest foods that have been poorly stored, even if they appear to be good, we risk also feeding harmful bacteria. This can completely unbalance the intestine, making room for diseases that previously seemed distant. And all this begins with a simple gesture: whether or not to put certain food in the refrigerator. Most people are not to blame. What's really missing is clear, empathetic, and reliable information. That's why it's so important to talk about this subject with those who are over 60. Care with nutrition doesn't have to be a burden. It can be something light, done with care, when you understand the reasons behind each choice. It's not about making big changes or living in fear of food, but about learning to use the refrigerator intelligently and avoiding what can harm you. Another very common example is honey. Few people know, but when placed in the refrigerator, honey crystallizes quickly and may lose some of its natural antioxidants. And it's precisely these antioxidants that help fight free radicals, which are associated with premature aging and the onset of diseases. The refrigerator, in this case, instead of preserving, ends up reducing the therapeutic power of the food. The same applies to homemade bread. When refrigerated, it dries out faster and can develop mold imperceptibly. This mold, if consumed, can affect the liver and even cause allergic reactions. And here comes an important part of this conversation. Not everything that is invisible ceases to be harmful. Many natural toxins have no smell, don't change the taste, and don't always alter the appearance of foods. But they remain there, being ingested every day, and over time they accumulate in the body. That's why symptoms often appear slowly, silently, like a pain that comes and goes, a discomfort that isn't understood, a fatigue that seems unexplained. And that's where the danger lies. But the good news is that all of this has a solution, and it's closer than you think. From the moment you understand what really should and shouldn't be stored in the refrigerator, your relationship with food changes. You begin to feel more energy, more willingness, and less discomfort. And this is no coincidence. It's a reflection of more conscious choices. The body feels, responds, and is grateful. You don't need to change everything at once. Small actions already make a big difference. Removing potatoes from the refrigerator, for example, is already a great start. Storing garlic in a dry and airy place, avoiding storing peeled onions for too long, using glass containers instead of plastic, all of this helps. These are simple adjustments, but they can prevent major problems in the future. If you're over 60 or know someone who is, share this information, because care begins with knowledge. And knowing this can change not only your health, but also how you view your diet. Stay calm, because in this video you will learn solutions that really work. We will still talk about the right way to store food, what should be inside and what should be outside the refrigerator, and how to transform your kitchen into a safer environment without having to spend anything more for it. In the next segment, we'll understand why these mistakes continue to be made, what the most dangerous myths are, and what many people do thinking they're taking care of themselves, but are actually making the situation worse. The important thing is that you are here, seeking information and taking care of yourself. And that, in itself, is already a huge step. If you've heard that storing everything in the refrigerator is safer, know that this idea, so common in many homes, is beginning to be questioned by health and nutrition experts, and it's not without reason. Research published by the European Institute of Food Safety revealed that approximately 30% of food poisoning cases in people over 60 are linked to incorrect storage of foods that visually appeared to be in perfect condition. This means that the danger often isn't in something that smells bad or looks dubious, but precisely in that food that appears to be in order. What most people don't know is that the refrigerator, being a humid and cold environment, can silently alter the chemical structure of certain foods. And the biggest problem isn't in leaving something outside or inside the appliance, but in not knowing what needs refrigeration and what cannot go through this process. Some natural compounds present in foods react to cold with subtle changes that only the body perceives, and the elderly body, in particular, feels these reactions more deeply. Let's give a concrete example. Potatoes, as we mentioned earlier, contain abundant starch. When exposed to refrigerator cold, this starch transforms into simple sugars, like glucose and fructose. When this potato is baked or fried, the combination of these sugars with the amino acid asparagine generates a chemical compound called acrylamide, identified by health agencies as potentially carcinogenic. In 2019, research from Stockholm University identified elevated levels of acrylamide in foods prepared from refrigerated potatoes. The study recommended that this type of storage be avoided, especially by the elderly, whose bodies are more susceptible to the accumulation of these toxins over time. And it doesn't stop there. Another recent study from the University of Reading, England, found that cooling extra virgin olive oil to temperatures below 10 degrees Celsius can lead to the degradation of polyphenols, antioxidant compounds essential for cardiovascular health. As a result, a food that should protect the heart may, if poorly stored, lose much of its beneficial effect. This is especially concerning for elderly individuals who often use olive oil as a healthy alternative in salads and sautéed dishes. Now consider garlic. When cut and left in the refrigerator for too long, it can become a breeding ground for a bacterium called Clostridium botulinum. This bacterium, although rare, is extremely dangerous. It can cause botulism, a serious condition that affects the nervous system and can be fatal in people with low immunity. The National Health Surveillance Agency even advises that homemade garlic pastes, or those stored for long periods, should be avoided or prepared very carefully, always respecting preservation times and using high-quality olive oils. Onions also undergo significant changes when refrigerated. They release internal moisture and attract fungi imperceptible to the naked eye, compromising their quality even before any visible signs appear. Continuous consumption of foods contaminated by fungi can overload the liver, which needs to work harder to filter these toxins. For elderly people, this can mean extra strain on an organ that is already naturally slowing down with age. Beyond these direct risks, continued consumption of poorly stored foods can trigger a process known as low-grade chronic inflammation. This term, which has been studied by scientists around the world, refers to a state in which the body is constantly trying to combat small internal aggressions, such as those caused by food toxins, excessive preservatives, or compounds generated by inadequate storage. This inflammation, because it doesn't present acute symptoms, goes unnoticed for a long time, but can accelerate cellular aging and increase the risk of diseases such as type 2 diabetes, hypertension, dementia, and even some types of cancer. The most frightening thing is that the symptoms of this silent inflammation are often confused with common signs of aging. Constant fatigue, unexplained muscle pain, swelling, forgetfulness, and mood changes. Many elderly people live with these signs without knowing they may be directly linked to their daily diet. This doesn't mean the refrigerator is a villain, but rather that its use requires knowledge. Knowing what goes inside it and what should stay out can make an enormous difference in quality of life. Another important point concerns the containers used to store food. Many people still use old plastic containers, stained with loose lids. Some of these containers, especially those without bisphenol A, BPA-free certification, can release harmful chemicals when in contact with fat or heat. Research indicates that continuous exposure to BPA can interfere with hormonal balance, affect liver function, and even be related to conditions of insomnia and irritability. Additionally, an extremely common and little discussed mistake is how many elderly people thaw meat. Leaving meat on the counter for hours is an invitation for the proliferation of bacteria such as Salmonella and E. coli. The ideal would be thawing in the refrigerator or, if in a hurry, in a controlled water bath, never at room temperature. And even then, once thawed, the meat needs to be consumed and never refrozen, as this process can compromise the protein structure of the food and generate harmful residues. It's not people's fault. It's a lack of guidance. For a long time, recommendations were made in general terms, without considering the individuality of each food or the vulnerability of the elderly organism. Today, with more studies and more access to information, we can clearly teach how to correct small habits that seem harmless, but which, in daily life, end up being responsible for a series of discomforts. And don't think it's just raw or fresh foods that require care. Leftover meals also deserve attention. Storing rice and beans in open containers or putting them still hot in the refrigerator, for example, is a common mistake that facilitates the multiplication of heat-resistant bacteria. When reheated, these foods may already be altered, even if the taste seems normal. The ideal is to always wait for the food to cool completely before refrigerating and store in well-sealed containers made of glass or stainless steel. To facilitate understanding, imagine that your body is like an old house full of stories and memories. With time, this house will demand more attention to the roof, pipes, and structure. Any infiltration, no matter how small, can affect the entire construction. The same happens with your body. Small entries of toxins every day will accumulate. Therefore, keeping your house clean, ventilated, and protected requires more care. And this care begins with the foods you choose to consume and how you preserve them. You don't need to worry or feel guilty. All of this is part of a learning process. The good news is that you can adjust these habits without difficulty. And when you start to feel the benefits, it's all worth it. Sleeping better, having more energy, reducing those unexplained pains, all of this can be linked to simple decisions you make in the kitchen. Just do it with attention, with care, and without fear of learning something new. Many people go through this and make these mistakes without realizing it. But relax, because in the next section we're going to talk about what really works. We'll present practical, accessible, and effective solutions. You'll see how it's possible to transform your food routine in a light, safe way, and above all, full of flavor. Let's go together on this journey because taking care of your health is indeed possible. And the best part, it can start today. If you've made it this far, it's because you care about your health and are willing to transform small daily habits. And this decision in itself is already something powerful. After all, it's with simple actions, done with awareness and care, that we build a life with more well-being and security. And the good news is that taking care of your diet and proper food storage doesn't require major changes or investments. It only requires information, attention, and that desire to live better. Let's start with the simplest and most effective solutions. The first is to set up a dry and cool corner in your kitchen. It can be a shelf, a wooden box lined with clean cloth, or even a basket away from direct sunlight. This is the ideal place to store foods like potatoes, onions, garlic, homemade bread, and even fruits like bananas. These foods don't need refrigeration and, when placed in the refrigerator, can lose nutrients or develop unwanted substances. Bread, for example, when refrigerated, dries out faster and can develop imperceptible fungi. Potatoes, as we've seen, form compounds that aren't good for you. And garlic, when stored cut and moist, becomes a silent risk. Now tell me in the comments if you identified with any of the habits we've discussed so far. Have you ever stored potatoes or onions in the refrigerator thinking they would last longer? Have you ever reused food thinking everything was fine but then felt sick? Sharing these experiences helps other people see themselves too and realize they're not alone. Another important step is to invest in proper containers. Give preference to glass containers with firm lids, which are more hygienic. Don't alter the taste of food, and don't release chemical substances when exposed to heat or cold. Breathable bags are also a great option for storing vegetables outside the refrigerator. They maintain air circulation and prevent moisture buildup. And whenever possible, use labels with dates on foods you store, both in the freezer and in the refrigerator. This helps you control consumption time and avoid waste. If this made sense to you, share it with someone who also needs this information. It can make all the difference. Sometimes a simple tip like this prevents discomfort, an infection, or even a more serious health problem. Sharing this knowledge is an act of care for those we love. Now let's talk about organization and hygiene. The refrigerator needs special attention, and maintaining a cleaning routine helps prevent food contamination. Once a week, set aside a moment to remove the items inside, check expiration dates, clean shelves with a damp cloth and white vinegar, and reorganize everything. Raw foods, such as meats, should always be kept on the lower shelves and well sealed, while cooked and ready-to-eat foods should be on the upper parts. This prevents what's called cross-contamination, which occurs when a raw food contaminates another, even without direct contact. Avoid accumulating leftover food for many days. Ideally, consume leftovers within 2 days and always store them in well-sealed containers, preferably in small portions. If possible, organize these leftovers into ready-to-eat dishes to facilitate consumption. In addition, when defrosting meats or other foods, always prefer defrosting in the refrigerator or under cold running water, never at room temperature. And never refreeze food that has already been thawed. This can multiply bacteria even if you don't see it. Here's a tip that can transform your eating routine. Prepare recipes with foods that don't need refrigeration. Fresh juices consumed immediately, broths made with fresh vegetables, homemade whole grain breads in small quantities, dried fruits, nuts, and seeds are great options to keep on hand. They last longer, maintain their nutrients, and reduce the risk of contamination from poor refrigeration. You can also create a simple schedule for organizing your refrigerator. Write down the days of the week to check foods, clean shelves, and plan meals with what you already have at home. This prevents waste, keeps the environment clean, and makes meal preparation easier. And remember, planning what you'll eat is also an act of self-care. If you like content like this, click like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell to receive more health and wellness tips. Here, we speak with care, based on reliable information, always seeking to make your life easier with practical, possible actions that you can apply today. As time passes, we come to understand that we don't need to do everything at once. Transformation happens gradually, one step at a time. The most important thing is to keep an attentive eye on the details and an open heart to learn. Each gesture of care for your health is a gift you offer yourself. And nobody knows your body, your needs, and your limits better than you. Don't demand too much of yourself. Don't blame yourself for past mistakes. What matters is what you choose to do from now on. And if you want to solve this once and for all, check out the link we've left here in the description with more detailed guidance. There you'll find guides, recipes, food lists, and tips specially organized for those who want to take care of their health without complication. It's never too late to take care of ourselves with more love and attention. With simple gestures, you can live with more health, freedom, and tranquility. You deserve to live well, with security and joy in every meal. Care begins in the details, and the first step starts now. And you know what? This first step can be as simple as opening the refrigerator with a new perspective. Observing with care what's inside, taking a few minutes to reorganize, check dates, clean shelves attentively. It may seem small, but this moment of care with what nourishes you is, in fact, a profound gesture of self-respect. It's like saying to your body, I care about you. And there's more. If you live with someone, this is a beautiful opportunity to share this knowledge, teaching a child, a grandchild, a neighbor, or even a friend you always meet at the market. Sharing this information is multiplying health. And by doing so, you also strengthen yourself. Because when we teach something, we reinforce that learning in ourselves. And that's how, with one helping another, we build a better life. Another important tip is to listen to your own body. Often it gives subtle signs that something isn't right. Discomfort after a meal, restless sleep, a feeling of bloating, or even that unexplained headache. Sometimes, all of this may be connected to what we eat and how we store food. So, besides taking care of the refrigerator, pay attention to how you feel. Paying attention to these signs is a powerful form of prevention. Remember, there's no right age to start taking care of yourself. There's the desire to live better. And you've already demonstrated that desire just by being here, listening, learning, reflecting. Each small gesture of self-care adds up and, together, they form a great transformation. May your kitchen be a place of health. May your food be your ally, and may each meal bring more vitality to your day. You deserve this, always. And if at any moment doubt strikes, if you think that perhaps it's too difficult or that it's too late, remember how wise your body is and how capable it is of renewal. Health doesn't require perfection. It only needs consistency and care. A well-chosen food, a container changed, a cleaning done with care. All of this day by day makes a difference. The most important thing is to move forward with lightness, without rushing, respecting your own pace. You're doing something for yourself, and that, without a doubt, is the beginning of a new phase, lighter and full of life.